Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, as President Trump heads to Davos, Switzerland, a lot of focus there on obviously what's happening with Greenland. What are the issues with NATO? There are so many layers to that discussion. But also tonight, everybody talking about what's happening in Minneapolis, and President Trump also did an extraordinary 2-hour press conference. That's right, 2-hour press conference. Talked about all the accomplishments that he has done in his first year of his second term. And if you could have heard him, he was answering so many questions seamlessly on a variety of topics, whether it had to do with Brazil, whether it had to do with sanctuary cities, whether it had to do with Iran. What a far cry from the predecessor there in the White House, Joe Biden, who couldn't last 5 seconds with reporters asking a slew of questions. Again, President Trump without scripts, just speaking extemporaneously, answering questions from reporters after he went through a litany of his accomplishments. And boy, the litany was great when you hear it. The border secure, crime numbers down, the economy definitely turning around from what he inherited from Joe Biden. Gas prices in some states at $1.99, $1.99. That's an amazing accomplishment. So we're going to talk about all of that tonight here on the Rita Cosby Show and so much more. Also, Zoran Mandani doubling, tripling down. And get this, now he's joining the Abolish ICE movement once again. Remember, just like he did essentially before the campaign and during the campaign. Remember, it was, I will not support ICE. I will not have local law enforcement. Now he's joining the Let's Get Rid of ICE Altogether campaign. This is really going to be a mess because President Trump says that he wants sanctuary cities by February 1st, which is right around the corner. He wants them to shape up or he's going to cut federal funds. And there's a lot of money. And Mandani is essentially saying, it doesn't matter. We're going to abolish ICE and we're not going to cooperate, even if it means losing tons of federal funds. Too bad. I'm going to stick to my guns. So this is going to get real messy and real ugly real soon. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show on another very busy news night. And also the other big news, of course, tied to Minneapolis is now the Department of Justice has subpoenaed a series of leaders there in the state. It includes Tim Walz, the Attorney General Keith Ellison, also Mayor Jacob Fry, and 2 others. They're being investigated for potential obstruction of justice and potential conspiracy to infringe and inspire these attacks on ICE. That maybe their comments have incited the crowd and prevented law enforcement from doing their job. It's a very powerful next legal step, and all 5 different government officials have officially received subpoenas. And one of the big comments that they're pointing to is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, because who could forget right after that horrible shooting, the very tragic and sad shooting of Renee Good. That was the woman, of course, in Minneapolis. And she was shot and killed by the ICE agent because it looks like she's trying to ram him with her vehicle. But here is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry back then. And what he said, many people said, was downright incendiary and dangerous. Take a listen. Remember this?
And I have a message for ICE. to ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you. And it's also on you to leave. It's on you to make sure that further damage, further loss of life and injury is not done.
I would say that's impeding law enforcement. Get out. F you. We don't need you here. Get out. Somebody's dead, and that's on you, and I blame you. He's talking about ICE, not the criminals. And believe me, there have been many of them that have been taken out of Minneapolis. And also, one of the other people who received a subpoena a few hours ago was Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. And this is how he described learning about the subpoena. He tries to flip the script and say it's Trump who's weaponizing the justice system. I contend that the Trump administration, when it comes to these crazy protests and when it comes to these terrible Democratic leaders that are definitely inspiring and whipping up the crowd, I think he's been actually too nice. I think he should have cracked down earlier, because had he cracked down earlier, maybe they wouldn't have gotten so out of control. They would have learned pretty quickly that maybe a night in the pokey isn't really the way to go. But listen to Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. He says Trump is over the top. And let's not forget, Trump, think about all the legal things that happened to President Trump, all the weaponization that happened to President Trump, all the different lawsuits. Let's not forget about them raiding Mar-a-Lago, going through even Melania's underwear drawers and Barron's drawers and the president's drawers, and everything else that happened to him and many of his supporters, too. Think about the people who just happened to go through an open door on January 6th. There were a lot of people that just were walking through and they got the book thrown at them. So here is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who says now, boo-hoo-hoo, he's a victim of weaponization.
Out front now to the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, central in all of this. And Attorney General, I just want to start with that protest at the church in St. Paul, which is now getting so much coverage. And of course, now the DOJ. You heard Todd Blanche just speaking out moments ago about it, the Deputy Attorney General. Do you think the DOJ has any case against any of the protesters there?
Well, we live in the age when people like Jerome Powell are under investigation, Tish James, James Comey, Mark Kelly, Elise Slotkin. The list goes on and on. Under this DOJ, wrongdoing has nothing to do with whether they're going to focus or investigate you. So I wish in a normal time I would say no. I say this is First Amendment activity. In time like this, it's just really difficult to say because the only one thing is clear. If Trump likes you, you can do no wrong. If he doesn't, he's going to use every weapon he can against you, including our criminal justice system.
As if the criminal justice system wasn't weaponized against President Trump. This guy really is in la la land. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Robert in Brooklyn on line 4. Robert, your thoughts tonight.
Hi, Rita. Thanks for taking my phone call. Well, first I just want to point out that the United States is considering Jewish people fleeing from the United Kingdom, considering whether they're going to treat them as refugees. That's how bad the anti-Semitism is in the United Kingdom. And, there's actually the Babylon Bee has this amazing tweet where it says Trump disguises himself as a Muslim migrant, so Europe will let him invade Greenland. It's a really cute little picture they have.
By the way, the Babylon Bee has some very clever stuff. But your point is an interesting one. And by the way, President Trump also talked about that today, how he said, the two big issues with a number of these European countries, not all of them, but a number of them, is they're still kind of caught up in the green energy stuff like the windmills and all that, and migration. They still have not gotten a handle, not clamped down on migration. And what a contrast to what President Trump was able to say today, that they haven't released a single individual into this country in 8 months straight. That's a remarkable record, and that certainly is something to tout. So much so that the issue of border security has really, sort of, dropped off the pages. Certainly the issue of immigration has not, but border security certainly has, and that's because President Trump had a will. You think about that. Biden could have fixed it on day one. He did not want to. He kept blaming it on Congress. All we needed was another president who had the will and the caring of this country to seal the border. And President Trump did it on day one, and he has continued it. And that's an extraordinary feat. But go ahead, Robert.
Well, Rita, it's very concerning because you had 3 senior cardinals, Catholic Church cardinals in the United States, basically telling Trump that to warning him about Greenland. It's very concerning the Catholic Church is opposing Trump. Now, I understand that people might not be so happy. He seems to be heavy-handed about Greenland, but President Trump is representing. He took an oath of office to uphold the United States, to defend this country. And if he feels that Greenland is necessary for the security of this country, then he has to do everything he needs to do to try to get Greenland. And I'll tell you something, as I said before, I'm just as concerned about the threat from the United Kingdom as anywhere else. Now, I want to focus on about the situation in Minnesota. I just want to point out there's a huge war that's going on. It's between those opposing traditional American values who want to transform America versus those supporting traditional American values who want to restore America. And it's all going to be about population. How do we encourage a population who want to restore America to outnumber the population who are going to try to transform America like Obama? You can't allow the establishment wants to just flood the country. Elon retweeted a few days ago that you have the new immigrants twice as likely to vote Democrat than Republican. In New York City, where Mamdani, people who are living in New York City, who are apparently born in New York City, they did not vote for Mamdani. So, now everything is being weaponized. The judicial system, the educational system being weaponized to try to discriminate against traditional American values. Many of the people, maybe even who were born here, but went through the indoctrination of the educational system, they're now trying to transform this country.
Now, let me ask you, though, Robert, you're bringing up some very good points. But now, don't you think, sadly, that weaponization or that radicalization is going to get a lot worse, I think. This year, it's a midterm year. It's a big election year. And if the Democrats can get the House, they will block Trump tooth and nail if they ever were to get the White House. And I thought about this so much today when we were listening to everything that President Trump has accomplished. Think about how different the world would look if it was Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the White House, for the last year. Did we, dodge heck on earth. Robert, final thoughts.
Well, Rita, I just want to point out, I hate to put it this way, but one of the biggest problems in the United States of America is Rita and Robert. Why are the two of us the biggest problems? Because people. No, Robert,
you're a bigger problem than I am. But go ahead.
Okay,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But but the reason what I'm trying to highlight is because if people like us who have traditional American values are not having children, and you have people like Mamdani who have large families, this is a demographics war. And they declare open war on white people with traditional values. Now, I believe in Martin Luther King, judging people by the content of their character. But they don't, and they're weaponizing everything, and they're trying to transform this country. And, one thing to point out, a few days ago, the Third Circuit reversed that Mahmoud Khalil. They said the district judge, a 2-1 decision. They said the district judge had no right to release him.
And guess who came out, Robert, in support of the original decision to release him? Good old Mondani. And when he heard the other judge scolding the release, he was upset at that judge. So you're absolutely right. You know, the one thing that's very interesting of what's been happening, and you talked about sort of this war, if you will, on Caucasians. Listen to what they were chanting at those people in the church. And a number of the people that were doing the chanting were Caucasian. I mean, that's the wild thing. One of the guys who's sort of head of this group, and I'll play some clips from this guy, William Kelly, he's one of the organizers, and he thinks he didn't do anything wrong, and he was shouting all this like, you white people, don't you care about Somalis? And he's white. Like it's just, it's a wild indoctrination that we are seeing on so many levels. And I'm for treating everybody fairly. Like, to me, I'm colorblind. I am like Martin Luther King. I judge you on your character instead. 1-800-848-9222. And we'll continue, everybody, after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
Well, the Department of Justice has now subpoenaed 5 Democrats in Minneapolis for potentially impeding law enforcement. Also, we know that they're looking into the case of the church. Remember, with all those agitators who stormed into the church. And they're definitely looking into potential charges there. And there could be some big ones. Let's go to Sandra in New Jersey real quick. Go ahead, Sandra, line 1.
Oh, okay, real quick. I'll talk about Omar. She said something really disgraceful. She basically said, God damn the United States. You know, Rita, that alone should ask her to leave. You know, that's very disrespectful. It's crossing a line in America. We don't talk like that. What's going on with her? She's getting away with everything.
But although, you know, it's interesting. President Trump did talk about her today. First of all, there's a lot of questions potentially with everything going on in Minnesota. And if you look, some of the rhetoric today from President Trump, he cited Ilhan Omar. And he also said, I wonder how she's gotten so rich in the last few years. So, you know, when President Trump says that, there may be something interesting behind the scenes happening.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where an electric vehicle's battery caught fire next to gas pumps, creating a potential disaster that the station staff and a police officer teamed up to avert. Firefighters arrived on the scene about 11 o'clock, and they saw the burning car parked next to gas pumps while the driver was inside the store. So Police Commander Richard Gabler said that the gas station staff, he ordered them to cut off the gas flow to the pumps in response to seeing the smoldering vehicle close by. Moments later, that officer used his squad to push the vehicle away from the fuel pumps and into an open parking lot, saying that shutting down the pumps reduced the chance of a major fire. However, there would still be a chance of property and other vehicles potentially catching fire had the vehicle with the EV battery not been moved. So, very powerful lesson. And by the way, also, he said that typical car fires extinguish in about 10 minutes and use 500 gallons of water. Electric vehicle battery fires take so much more time. and lots of water to cool the batteries down. Very important information. And thank goodness in this case, it was a happy ending. Thanks to the men and women in blue, also the fire team, and also the guy who owns the gas station, who obviously was doing some quick thinking as well. Well, today we're talking about this on the Rita Cosby Show. President Trump talking about his first year in office. Today was the anniversary of the first year of his second term. And he right away said, I am standing by ICE. I'm standing by federal law enforcement. It was the first thing. He's talking about all his achievements. And yet the very first thing, clearly, he is focused on, he's thinking about Minnesota. He's thinking about the men and women in blue. And this is what he had to say. Listen to what he said about law enforcement. And he also took a little swipe at Don Lemon, because remember, good old Don Lemon was out there with the protesters at that horrible incident at the church where they stormed the church service. Listen to President Trump.
From where they came, that's all they want to do. They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible yesterday. Look at it here. 24 convictions. 24 times convicted. They're not charges. These are convictions.
Yeah. Not charges. These are convictions. He was going through the litany of all these people that have been arrested in Minneapolis, just even in the last few days by ICE. And it was pretty extraordinary. He was holding up these pictures saying, this one over here, he has a murder record. This one over here is a child sex predator. This one over here. It was really stunning and really powerful to see. And boy, was that eye-opening. And here is President Trump also saying, listen, we have compassion for people who come to this country, but you got to come here legally. But he also reminded everybody the focus of ICE is to go after criminals. This is what he's always believed, is the focus is to go after hardcore criminals, and especially those that have some pretty serious criminal records. And sadly, there's a lot of them in this country, thanks to the open border policy of the Democrats and Joe Biden. But listen to what he had to say. It was a pretty interesting message. And I think it's extremely important, given this is a midterm election year. He is clearly saying, look, once in a while, other people get swept up in these raids. But these other people, like a farmer or a nanny, a grandmother, that's not who we're going for. We're going for the worst of the worst. Sometimes they get swept up in it because they happen to be with these people, but that's not our focus. And I think it's a very important message for the president to say. Take a listen to this. And this is what he said about who ICE is going after, and also that he has compassion for folks that are in this country if they're trying to do the right thing and love this country.
Many countries opened up their prisons and dropped them into the United States. Those are the people who are getting out. And we have a lot of heart. And I said, you got to lighten up on this. We have a lot of heart for people. They came in illegally, but they're good people, and they're working now on farms, and they're working in luncheonettes and hotels and all. And we're looking to get the criminals out right now, the criminals. And I think it's very important. I mean, every once in a while you see a story, we take somebody. He should be out because they came in illegally. So in theory, they should be. But we're focused on the murderers, the drug dealers, the mentally insane. We have a lot of mentally insane killers. I mean, you can't even talk to them. It'd be nice if you could have a little reason, but you can't even reason. These are seriously ill people. You have.
And he said, listen, there are good people, as he said, working on farms, hotels. We want to have them here legally. We want to have them vetted. But our focus is clearly the bad folks. And there are hundreds of thousands of them. And then he also talked about the shooting of Renee Good. This is the woman that you see in the SUV. The video looks pretty clear, like that she is trying to run over the ICE guy. That's my impression. That's what a lot of people believe in that video. And remember, she was blocking the street earlier, taunting them as well. And here is what President Trump had to say about the shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis.
And we're met with paid agitators and insurrectionists, troublemakers. They're paid. You know, when the woman was shot, I felt terribly about that. And I understand both sides of it. But when she was shot, there was another woman that was screaming shame, 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 right? You saw it. So loud. It was like a professional opera singer. She was so loud and so professional. She wasn't a woman that was hurt, like, oh, my heart's injured. She was a professional. Shame, shame. She's screaming, shame, shame. I said, that's not a normal person. That's a professional. These are professional agitators and professional people that want to see our country do badly. But that's not happening because we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, despite this stuff. Look at this.
And indeed, there are reports that the Trump administration is going to start looking into who is funding these protests. Because, boy, are they getting out of hand, guys. And, boy, are things getting dangerous. And they should be going after these people who are funding very in an orchestrated way. We talked about it last night. They're showing up in the same clothes, the same outfits. They happen to be there, whether it's pro-Hamas, whether it's anti-ICE. It's like a protest of the day as long as they're getting paid. That's what I believe. And a number of them have come out and said they are getting paid. I can't imagine that they're able to fly all over the country just for different various protests and happen to wear the same outfits and happen to have a lot of pre-produced signs, too. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Matt in the Bronx. Go ahead, Matt.
With regard to the immigration mess, I wanted to point your direction and point the audience's direction to a book. It's The Cultural Critique by Dr. Kevin MacDonald.
Okay, to get to the point of it, I don't want to be a library. Go ahead.
Right, and the point of it is it just points out that basically that the 1965 Immigration Act was pushed by left-wing radicals in the Congress. They spent decades in the Congress trying to get their laws overturned.
And now here we are, right? Now here we are. So what do you think now? Let's take it to current times.
And when you look at somebody like Jacob Fry, he's one of these Jewish left-wing liberals that, he definitely advocates for the borders to be wide open in the United States. But in Israel, you know what they do to illegal immigrants there? They put them in detention centers, and they deport them en masse by the thousands. They don't allow their borders to be porous. They don't allow thousands and hundreds and millions of people to overrun their frontiers and their borders.
And you know why? Because Israel has had to fight for its survival for so many years. They understand that even if they're a lot of people with good intentions, there's a lot of people with bad intentions that take advantage of situations like that, Matt. And that, by the way, that was another thing that President Trump talked about today. He really took it to the UK and a number of others and said, what the heck are you doing with your country? I mean, you look at, have you been to London at all recently, Matt? I've been a number of years ago, and even a number of years ago, I didn't recognize London. I mean, it looked like we were in Baghdad.
Yeah, it's not just the United States. And again, it's people like Jacob Fry, people like Tim Walz. They advocate the same thing in every European country and only European countries. So the same thing Israel has had to do, Western European countries, the United States, Canada, Australia, they have to do the exact same thing. They have to literally fight for their existence.
The problem is, Matt, they're not going to do it. When obviously you will when you have somebody like President Trump at the helm. But in some of these European countries where you've got some very, very sort of soft, on crime and soft on immigration folks, they're not going to give it. Do you think the leader of Canada, even the leader of UK, Macron, they're saying come one, come all still? They haven't learned a lesson yet.
But these people, this is what they're afraid of, Rita, these people are deathly afraid of being defeated at the polls by rising parties in those countries, like the National Front in France, Marine Le Pen. She was on the cusp of being the candidate for the National Front. You know what they did to her? They charged her with misusing campaign funds and barred her for running for 5 years. But very conveniently, when the election is 2 years away, and she would have won the election had she stood for election. That's what these people are not just sick, they're corrupt, terminally corrupt. They want to make sure that their power is not challenged by the popular will of the electorates that they betrayed by keeping these borders open. And there are movements in these countries. There's France, Germany, you have the AFD. In Britain, you have a variety of countries, parties that are in favor of closing the borders. That's what they're terribly afraid of, because illegal third world immigration, legal and illegal, is immensely unpopular across the Western world, not just the United States. But, the people are never given the opportunity to vote. And when they do vote, they vote for parties that want to eject the immigrants that have overrun their countries. And that's what the people in power are so deathly afraid of, having a popular will of opposition to third world immigration be elected into these parliaments, into these legislatures, and booting the immigrants, invaders, out of their countries unceremoniously. And that's exactly what needs to be done.
No, great points. Great point. Matt, thank you very much. And you guys, now we have some interesting breaking news.
Breaking news.
Just coming in, that Air Force One, which President Trump recently boarded as he was heading to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, has suddenly made a dramatic turnaround and seems to be headed back to D.C. It's unclear why Air Force One pulled what looks like a U-turn in the air. Obviously, we are praying for the president's safety. It's unclear if it was mechanical, if there was some other sort of threat. We will keep you posted. But a U.S. government motorcade also seen on the interstate with racing lights and sirens rushing to Joint Air Force Base Andrews, which is right near D.C., after Air Force One turns around over the Atlantic Ocean. Remember, he was going to Davos, Switzerland, and it's unclear why he has immediately come back. So we'll keep you posted on this. Again, we don't know if it's mechanical, if it's something else, but we'll hope to have more right after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show. Breaking news.
And more information coming in about the sudden turnaround of Air Force One, which was headed to Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum with President Trump. And obviously many people in his administration, a huge, obviously, contingent going with them over to Switzerland. Minutes after takeoff, suddenly Air Force One did a U-turn in the air, and it is now coming back, or is back, in Maryland at Andrews Air Force Base, right outside Washington, D.C. There are reports that there was some sort of mechanical or electrical issue with the plane, and that the president will be getting on board a backup plane to Davos. Obviously, it's going to have to be a big, big plane because there's a big, big contingent whenever the president travels, security-wise and staff-wise. So for all of those reasons, but suddenly some sort of mechanical or technical issue. We'll try to get more word of what it is. The good news is everybody is safe, and apparently they're in the process of trying to figure out which plane the president can get on, because he's supposed to deliver a big address to many people at the World Economic Forum in just a matter of hours. So lots to talk about. Iran, Greenland, all those things. He was going to be talking about the Board of Peace, which would be the board that would be overseeing peace coming hopefully to Gaza and between Israel and Gaza. So lots of important things on the table, and this was to be a real biggie. And now some sort of technical electrical issue. You would imagine something like Air Force One has a lot of redundancies in terms of checking to make sure that it's fully equipped, that there's some sort of, fallback if there's some sort of technical issue, that there would be a lot of replacements, a lot of backup systems on the plane. And we don't know how severe or how significant, but clearly it was significant enough. And they certainly did not want to take a chance with the president of the United States and his massive entourage. And this was just the beginning of the flight. There were many, many hours, of course, as it takes to get to Switzerland. And if there was some sort of issue, the last thing they wanted was to continue with some sort of problem, no matter who the person is on board, let alone the president of the United States. We'll keep you posted as soon as we get more details on this. Let's go to Joaquin in Pennsylvania, line 3. Go ahead, Joaquin, your thoughts tonight.
Good evening, Rita. I wanted to add to what Matt was saying there about France-Marie Le Pen. It's the same thing that happened to Jair Bolsonaro down in Brazil. That was the same reason why we lost Brazil, because they went after him because he was actually pro-Western civilization and anti-globalist establishment. But, I heard the funniest
and also, by the way, fairly close to Trump, too. It was like the Trump derangement syndrome spilled over beyond Trump to anybody close to Trump,
Exactly. Everything about that whole thing, it just was mirror of what happened to President Trump, right down to voting machines and everything. But, I think I heard today the most, I don't want to say funny joke, but the joke of the century, if you think about it. We are actually paying the Chinese to compromise our national security, to put up devices that are going to thwart our ability to detect any kind of incoming drones or these underwater vehicles. We're paying them to build the windmills that jam our systems.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You're right, because they're playing a role in a number of the construction issues. And then separately, right, like you said, how do we know that there's not going to be some bug, or regardless, they're going to know how to infiltrate it. And that's, exactly. the irony that we were talking earlier, you probably heard earlier, now these judges have come down and said, what national security issue? We don't see it. Like the judges are somehow the national security experts overriding the Trump administration, which says there are these problems with these windmills. There are problems, because of the size of them, getting through, communications, their radar. There's so many issues that are actually really big, serious stuff. And suddenly these judges unilaterally decided they're the experts. Needless to say, the Trump administration is going to appeal, right? I mean, this is crazy. This is another idea of these judges, random judges making random decisions, Joaquin.
This is just ridiculous. When you hear this is going on, how is it even possible? And actually, there is another point too. Matt brings up Israel. Well, actually, Israel is starting to have its own problems with leftist indoctrinations creeping into its younger society.
Yeah, and you know what? You're right. And you look at even, there were a number of leftists, remember, who voted, some Jewish leftists. I don't know how they could do it, but they voted for Mondani. Wow.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.